We are so inspired by Deepali ji's commitment to recording and amplifying the stories of persecuted Hindus, not just in Bangladesh, but around the world, and advocating for them on the global stage. Here is a powerful video she created about the epistemic injustice of Hindu persecution.
Namaste, and thank you so much to the Hindu Students Council and the co-directors of the Understanding Hinduphobia Conference, Dr. Indu Viswanathan and Dr. Parth Parihar, for putting together this conference so that we can better understand the realities of Hinduphobia and its consequences. Today, I'd like to talk here about silencing Hindu victims through a case study of the epistemic injustice endured by Kashmiri Hindus. This talk could be about any number of Hindu communities, and so I hope it'll be a starting point for us to discuss the epistemic injustice that Hindu communities face. Kashmiri Hindus have faced numerous injustices, from the ethnic cleansing in 1989 to 1990, their continued displacement outside of Kashmir, as well as through targeted killings. Just last year, the killings of Hindus, migrant Muslims, and a Sikh with the rise of the Taliban in Afghanistan provided for us a clear window into the past and present of Kashmir. But what I want to discuss today is the injustice of words rather than actions. I want to explore the injustices Kashmiri Hindus endure while sharing their accounts of their firsthand experiences and family histories. This injustice can best be described as epistemic, or having to do with knowledge, and was articulated by American philosopher Miranda Fricker. The definition of the two forms of epistemic injustice we'll use today is best put in Fricker's own words. Quote, "Testimonial injustice occurs when prejudice causes a hearer to give a deflated level of credibility to a speaker's word. Hermeneutical injustice occurs at a prior stage when a gap in collective interpretive resources puts someone at an unfair advantage when it comes to making sense of their social experiences." Hindus, and especially Hindu victims of violence, thus are consistently subject to both forms of epistemic injustice articulated by Fricker. Today, I will focus on just this first form of epistemic injustice, testimonial injustice. This manifestation of testimonial injustice paints Hindus as perpetrators of crimes, even when they are victims, and is just one of the ways that Hinduphobia operates. This month, March 2022, a film called Kashmir Files, which recounts some of the specific killing, rape, displacement, and disenfranchisement that Kashmiri Hindus have faced, gained global notoriety. The film gives an account of Kashmiri Hindu experiences, which have been confirmed by Kashmiri Hindus who have felt heard by the film. After watching the film, we are moved to acknowledge the experience of Kashmiri Hindus and mourn with them. But there is a surprising take on the film which discredits the Kashmiri Hindu accounts of the violence they faced. Quote, "The Kashmir Files, How a New Bollywood Film Marks India's Further Descent into Bigotry," a Time article title claims. Here's another one. "The Kashmir Files Fans Islamophobia, Tamil Nadu Congress Committee TNCC Chief," reads a Times of India article title. The response to the Kashmir Files' depiction of violence against Hindus is to claim that showing Hindus as victims is in and of itself violent, that saying Hindus are victims is actually violence against or promotes violence against Muslims. For those of us that have seen the film, we know that there are Muslims who are portrayed as compassionate and supportive to the Hindus who are being targeted. The film does make it clear that the terrorist forces that operated in Kashmir were the perpetrators of violence, and that these forces were spurred on by Pakistan at the time. Imagining all Muslims in Kashmir as violent, rather than just the terrorists who are killing Hindus, is itself the definition of Islamophobia. Imagining all Muslims as violent and intent on killing is not what the film does, but is what critics of the film have done as an end result of the testimonial injustice against Kashmiri Hindus. If critics of the film hope to be epistemically just, then they could hear the experiences of Kashmiri Hindus and consider them. Denigrating and demonizing victims does not help the victims, but it can help the perpetrators of the original crime. So now let's look at what actually happened to Kashmiri Hindus. Starting in 1984, political leaders in the state, such as Ghulam Muhammad Shah, began inciting Muslims, claiming that Islam was in danger. This led to violent riots targeting Kashmiri Pandits in South Kashmir and Sopore, where Hindus were killed and several temples and properties were destroyed. Subsequent anti-Hindu riots in Anantnag in 1986 resulted in the destruction of several Kashmiri Hindu homes and properties and the flight of many Hindu families out of the valley. The anti-Hindu violence culminated in the events of 1989 to 1990, when more than 350,000, and by some accounts more than 500,000 Kashmiri Hindus were ethnically cleansed from the valley by Muslim extremists. The forced displacement was accompanied by a campaign of violence and destruction in the valley. Kashmiri Pandit groups estimate that since 1989, nearly 105 educational institutions run by Kashmiri Hindus have been burned down or destroyed, hundreds of temples and religious sites damaged or demolished, 14,430 businesses and shops destroyed, and more than 20,000 Kashmiri Hindu homes destroyed, looted, or occupied. According to official statistics from the state government, 208 Hindu temples have been destroyed or damaged since the start of the violence in 1989. Other estimates assert that numbers are much higher. A recent survey of Hindu shrines in Kashmir found that 347 Hindu religious sites were destroyed or damaged, while another organization asserts that 550 temples were destroyed or damaged. The violent campaign targeting Hindus in Kashmir was thus organized and systematic. It included massacres, rapes, threats, and intimidation. Public announcements were placed in newspapers, sermons made in mosques, and posters hung on houses ordering all Kashmiri Hindus to leave the valley, threatening violence if they did not, and calling on Muslims to take up jihad against non-Muslims. Letters were sent to Hindus' homes stating, quote, "We order you to leave Kashmir immediately, otherwise your children will be harmed. We are not scaring you, but this land is only for Muslims and is a land of Allah. Sikhs and Hindus cannot stay here," end quote. The threatening note ended with a warning. Quote, "If you do not obey, we will start with your children. Kashmir liberation, Zindabad," end quote. In addition, mobs of tens of thousands of Kashmiri Muslims took to the streets chanting slogans including "Death to Kafirs," meaning non-Muslims or non-believers, and quote, "We will turn Kashmir into Pakistan, with Kashmiri Hindu women, but without their men," end quote. Similarly, armed members of militant groups marched publicly to intimidate the Kashmiri Hindu community. Noted journalist Rahul Pandita asserted that along with Islamists, many ordinary Kashmiri Muslims participated in the ethnic cleansing of the Pandits. One elderly Kashmiri Hindu recounted, quote, "Our people were killed. I saw a girl tortured with cigarette butts. Another man had his eyes pulled out and his body hung on a tree. The armed separatists used a chainsaw to cut our bodies into pieces," end quote. After this ethnic cleansing, thousands were forced to live in squalid camps for decades, and many still live in camps to this day. Given this level of violence and the evidence available to confirm it, it is, of course, paramount for all of us around the world to support Kashmiri Hindus and prevent further violence in the region. This testimonial injustice, which silences Kashmiri Hindus and claims that their descriptions of their trauma is violence towards another group, will not prevent violence in the future. Denying victims' experiences not only denies the recognition of their humanity, but also prevents Hindu and Muslim communities from healing and achieving reconciliation in India. Today, Kashmiri Hindus in India continue to be internally displaced people. Although recent domicile laws in India began to address their displacement, the law does not include the necessary steps to fully rehabilitate Kashmiri Hindus. More work needs to be done, and the Hindu American Foundation will continue to stand in solidarity with Kashmiri Hindus to do this work. Namaste.
For the latest on our YouTube channel, click subscribe and hit the bell icon for alerts on new content. Remember to like, comment, and share our videos. For more about HSC, you can visit the social media handles listed below.